She told me she was taking a nap, but my card got charged at a downtown cocktail bar. I was halfway through cleaning the stovetop when her message pinged. A soft, nap for an hour, my head's pounding, with a yawning emoji that looked almost theatrical in its sleepiness. She'd been out late the night before with her friend. Nothing big, she said. Just the kind of catching up you do when work squeezes the energy out of you like a sponge. And this morning she'd been wilted from the moment she shuffled to the couch in her oversized gray hoodie. I brought her a glass of water, kissed her forehead, and watched her curl into the throw blanket that still smelled like our detergent in last winter. "Wake me at 3, she murmured, voice drifting off like she was already chasing sleep down a hallway. I nodded, set an alarm, and went back to scraping the ring of caramelized sauce off the metal grate, telling myself this was just another Saturday with errands and an afternoon grocery run. At 2:57 p.m., my bank app buzzed with the flat neutrality of a machine. Your card was just used at Vesper Room, Ukrainian hryvnias. I didn't recognize the number immediately. My brain snagged, tried to think of online subscriptions, recent deliveries, some recurring charge, but the merchant name snapped into place like a cold click. Vesper Room. Downtown? The long black bar like a piano lid. The low brass lamps. The post-work crowd that rehearsed their cleverness into the mirror over the shelves of bottles. I stared stupidly at the message, and in the other room she turned over and made the soft, innocent sound of a person asleep and unconcerned. I walked over and paused at the doorway. She was a heap of blanket with one bare foot sticking out, toenails chipped coral. The gray hoodie was bunched under her cheek. The phone lay on the coffee table, screen face down. The sensible explanation lined up automatically. Fraud. It had to be fraud. My card had been skimmed somewhere or duplicated. A bartender keyed in the wrong number. Some back-end glitch stamped my card onto a stranger's drink. I slipped into the habit I use at work whenever something is off. A bit of triage, a bit of control. Step 1. Lock the card. I thumbed open the app, hovered over the toggle, and felt a brief childish panic at breaking the world if I touched it. I set the phone down and looked at her again. The living, sleeping explanation that I should trust. She's right here. She is right here. Still, I called the customer service number. The background music was a loop with chirpy xylophones that always makes my teeth feel too big. When an agent picked up, I gave them my details and asked about the charge. Contactless. Present at merchant, the voice said, crisp as if reading from a panel. Tokenized. Not keyed. Timestamp 1503. There was a little hiccup as she typed, then, physical device was used in person at the location. My first stupid thought was, but I'm not there. Then, contactless means a device. A phone. A watch. Something close enough to the bar's reader that it could feel the little nudge of money moving. Can you tell me if it was Apple Pay? I asked, already tasting the answer. And the agent said she couldn't see the brand, only that it was a device, an NFC token, a thing that touches in order to take. She read me the merchant descriptor again, and the address was the exact corner I'd walked past so many times on my way to the tram. I ended the call and stood there, phone in my hand, letting the silence of the apartment expand and become a shape I could carry. There was a barely there sound coming from the living room, the couch fabric sighing. I patted closer. Her face was turned toward the window, eyes closed, lashes casting little gray commas on her cheek. The hoodie, the same hoodie she always said she wore only at home because of the bleach spot on the sleeve from when she tried to clean the bathroom too quickly, was here, tangible. Her phone sat face down like a stone. My reflection ghosted on the black glass as I set my palm above it for a second, ready to pull back if she stirred. The hesitation felt bad. It felt like I was tiptoeing toward guilt. I didn't touch it. I scrolled our thread instead. The last thing from her, nap for an hour, had the little read under my thumbs because of course I'd opened it. I clicked her profile picture out of some dumb reflex and saw the green dot smirking beside last active 1 minute ago. I stared at that too, waiting for it to turn gray, to become the kind of metric you can ignore. Maybe some background process had woken the app. Maybe a notification had fidgeted her phone. Maybe I just didn't know how these things worked. I set my own phone down, went to the sink, and ran water so cold my hands stung. Sensible explanations again. Last week, on the way home from a movie, she'd asked to add my card to her rideshare because her app was bugging out, and we were on a corner with terrible reception. Just for tonight, she'd said. I'll delete it after. I'd watched her thumb through the fields, watched the numbers slip in, watched the Face ID blink. We'd gotten home, and I'd forgotten to ask whether after had become never. It didn't make me special that I noticed timestamps. It made me annoying sometimes, I knew. I take pictures of receipts and forward myself, email confirmations, and put the words, "for future me," in the subject line. It isn't about catching anyone, It's about soothing the part of me that hates how everything important can vanish behind a dead screen. I told myself that again while I opened the banking app and submitted the disputed charge, attaching my notes with the dry, careful language I use when I don't want to be misunderstood. I am currently at home, the cardholder. I did not approve or conduct this transaction. Please investigate. The form clacked into place with a dull confirmation. Down the hall, the hallway clock performed its little throat clearing at the top of the hour. 3 quiet ticks because I'd never bothered to change the chime. I tried to picture the person holding a device at the bar's reader. Not a face, just a gesture. The casual tilt of the wrist, the half-apology smile people put on when a machine makes them wait. I imagined the light thud of glass on wood, a laugh that turns into a cough, the door opening and calling in another exhale of downtown. And then, because I am not a saint, the picture telescoped into a grainier one. Something that felt less like imagination and more like a memory I'd been given against my will. Her gray hoodie among black coats and blacker walls. Her hair in the braid she did when she didn't want to style it. Her mouth around a straw, lips unstained because she prefers the balms that don't leave marks on cups. My alarm went off, quiet and ridiculous in the kitchen where I'd left it. I silenced it and went to wake her. I said her name softly. She didn't move. I said it again. She made a small grumble and pulled the blanket higher, as if the difference between dreams and me was just a degree of warmth. It's 3, I said. You asked me to wake you at 3. The blanket lowered. She blinked, unfocused, and did a bleary smile that made me feel immediately ashamed for everything I'd thought in the last 10 minutes. 5 more, she whispered. My head is, ugh, I nodded. I'm gonna run down to the corner store, I said. We're out of eggs. She mumbled something that could have been okay, or could have been the fabric speaking. In the elevator, I stared at the numbers and at my reflection, which had become the face you get the day you realize some boundary you thought was tacit was in fact only in your head. I didn't go to the corner store. I walked to the tram stop with my collar up against a wind that smelled like rust and soap, and I stood on the platform with 3 other people all looking at the same nothing. And when the tram came, I didn't sit because my body felt like it had to be ready to jump. The app map ticked the route and my eyes ticked with it, blinking at cross streets I knew too well. At one stop, a couple got on with a bouquet and a cone of craft paper. The flowers were not replaced by anything in the bar image. It stuck to me like a sticker I couldn't peel off cleanly. Vesper Room had a black door that made its name look like a whisper. The doorman glanced at me with that corner-of-the-mouth understanding. 3 in the afternoon, not their hour. Not exactly dressed for cocktails. The street was thinning out from lunch. The office people had stopped pretending they'd go back. A bus blew past and left the smell of warmed rubber in its wake. I didn't go in. I stood across the street and called the bar's number I found in a review, because walking in felt like making something true that could still be unmade by a better explanation. A man answered, voice grainy with the ambient clatter of glass. I said my name, my card, the time, the charge. The pause on the other end did the thing pauses do when someone is deciding which part of a truth will cause the least trouble. We can't share footage, he said, and then softened. But if it's your card, you should file with your bank. We can confirm a contactless payment at that time. 2 drinks. One was our citrus spritz. The other was, he hesitated, as if choosing between recipes. House Manhattan. Stirred. That one's popular. A citrus spritz. She liked drinks that tasted like the place had a garden inside the ice. I thanked him and asked if there was a check. He said there was, and that if the bank asked, they'd cooperate. He'd seen this kind of thing before. The line clicked softly when he put the receiver down to check something, then returned with a name I already knew. The sound behind him morphed into the tinkle of ice in a tin and the hollow puck of a shaker setting down. If you come by, he said, dropping his voice like we were conspiring, I'll at least let you see the amount. I'm not supposed to, but sometimes these things are misunderstandings. We try to help people not hate each other forever. I looked at the door again, at the reflection of the geometric brass lamp in the glass. I looked at my hands. They were steady in the way hands are when the brain has convinced them that steadiness equals kindness. Across the street, someone laughed. And in the laugh, I heard something I couldn't unhear. An echo of last winter, of a Friday night when she'd said we should save money by learning to make proper drinks at home, and we'd ruined a perfectly good bottle of vermouth. I stepped off the curb and waited for a gap in traffic. As I reached the sidewalk, someone opened the Vesper Room door from the inside, and the sound that came out into the afternoon was the unmistakable clean chime of ice shifting in glass the moment it touches a new drink. I put my hand on the handle, and the bar's cool breath pulled at my sleeve like a tide. I pushed open the door, the cool air inside folding over me like a tide. The light was dim, the brass fixtures glowing against dark wood. It smelled faintly of citrus peel and rye whiskey, the kind of scent that makes you think of polished glassware and secrets. The bartender glanced up, polite but faintly puzzled, probably wondering why someone in a windbreaker was stepping into a cocktail bar in the middle of the afternoon. I asked for the manager. A man with neatly cropped hair and a tie loosened just enough to look approachable came over. It had to be the same voice from the phone. "I'm Ruslan," he said. His eyes flicked to the door, like he was making sure I hadn't brought an audience. I explained again about the card charge, the time, my suspicion. He nodded like this was routine. "2 drinks, contactless payment," he said, pulling a slip from under the counter. The check was printed in small, neat type. Total, 300,000 hryvnia. Item 1, House Manhattan. Item 2, Citrus Spritz. And there, on the signature line, though it wasn't required for a contactless payment, was a little swirl, the kind of absent-minded flourish people make out of habit. It was just a couple of loops with a dot over an I, but the dot was a tiny heart. I'd seen it on Post-it notes, on grocery lists, even on the side of a coffee cup she'd handed me once, laughing. I kept my voice neutral. "Mind if I take a picture of that?" He hesitated, then shrugged, letting me snap it. "If your bank requests video, we'll cooperate," he added. "But officially, I can't hand anything over without that." I thanked him, slid the phone back into my pocket, and left before I could start asking for details that would make it obvious I wasn't here for a simple dispute. On the tram ride back, I sent her a text. "You awake?" Read receipt lit up almost instantly. No reply. I sent another. "We need to talk when I get home." Still nothing. When I stepped into the apartment, she was in the kitchen, pouring tea into the big mug she always used when she was sick. "Hey," she said, sounding casual, almost warm. "Where'd you go?" I told her about the bank alert. Her eyes widened. "What? That's crazy. Someone's using your card." "I went to Vesper Room," I said. They had the check. I slid my phone across the counter, the picture of the slip open. She glanced down, blinked once, and then gave me a laugh that was too quick, too airy. "That's not my signature." "The heart over the I?" I asked. She shrugged. "Lots of people do that. Lots of people who also have my card in their Apple Pay?" I countered. Her smile faltered. "I don't have," she began, then stopped, probably remembering the rideshare excuse from weeks ago. "Okay, yes, but I didn't use it. I was here. Ask Marina. We were texting all afternoon." "Funny," I said, because her Instagram stories from today were all from this morning, and none of them have a location tag. Her face went still, the way it does when someone decides to shift the argument to higher ground. "You're really going to interrogate me over this? You're making me feel like a criminal. Do you even hear yourself?" I bit back the urge to list every detail. Timestamps, the bank call, the bartender's description. Instead, I just said, "I'm not accusing. I'm asking for the truth." She rolled her eyes like I was being melodramatic. "The truth is you're paranoid, and you need to stop keeping tabs on me like I'm a child." Her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't move, but my eyes caught the preview before she turned it face down. A message from Marina. "Everything okay?" That alone was nothing. But the timing, right in the middle of this, made my gut twist. I stepped back, letting the conversation die before it turned into shouting. "We'll talk later," I said. She muttered something about going to lie down again. When she disappeared down the hall, I opened my banking app and looked at the dispute case number. Under Merchant Details, there was a new line I hadn't noticed before. Device used, Ira's iPhone. I stared at that line until the letters seemed to blur into the background of my screen. Ira's iPhone. Not unknown device, not token ending in, but her name, tied to the transaction like an engraved plate on a trophy. I took a screenshot and saved it in a new folder I'd just created. Vesper Evidence. I knew if I left it mixed in with everything else, I'd either lose it or convince myself later that I'd imagined it. From the bedroom, I heard the creak of the mattress and the faint, muffled sound of her voice. At first, I thought she was talking to me, but the tone was lighter, like the way she spoke on the phone with friends when she didn't want me to hear specifics. I padded silently down the hall until I was just outside the door. Her words came in bursts between little pauses, almost like she was listening more than speaking. "Yeah, I know. No, he bought it. I'll handle it later." My name wasn't mentioned, but I felt it hanging unspoken in the space between her syllables. When I walked into the room, she jumped slightly, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "Nobody," she said instantly, which is exactly the answer people give when they're lying. "Just checking a voicemail." "Pretty long for a voicemail," I said. But she'd already rolled over. The conversation shut down by force of will. I stood there for a few seconds, wanting to press harder. But something in her posture told me I'd only get deeper into the swamp if I did it now. Back in the kitchen, I called the bank again. The second agent was more forthcoming, maybe because I framed it as needing clarification for my dispute notes. Yes, I can confirm the device name came through with the token, she said. It means the merchant's reader accepted payment directly from that specific phone. Which means, I asked. She hesitated, like she was trying to choose the least dramatic phrasing. Which means the person in possession of that phone physically tapped it to pay. That was all I needed to hear. When we hung up, I messaged Marina. Hey, weird question, but were you actually with Ira this afternoon? She didn't respond right away. And when she did, the reply was like it had been workshopped with a lawyer. Of course. Why? Is everything okay? No details. No emojis. Just flat assurance, as if too much texture might crack the veneer. I tapped her profile and scrolled back through her stories. The last one with Ira in it was time-stamped just after noon. They were in Marina's apartment, light streaming in from the big corner windows, both of them holding mugs. But the sunlight in the video was wrong for afternoon. It was sharp, angled in a way you only get before 1 p.m. And then, an hour later in my own timeline, my card was being charged at Vesper Room. I saved that story too. It was close to 5 when my phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from Shazam. I'd set it to auto-recognize earlier when I was near the bar, just to see what it might pick up. The track listed was a moody synth number I knew from somewhere, one of those curated playlists Vesper Room cycles through. The recognition time was logged as 15:05, the exact moment the bartender had said the drinks were served. By now, my folder was a patchwork quilt of digital crumbs. The check with the heart-dotted I, the screenshot of Ira's iPhone, Marina's conveniently vague text, the time-stamped Instagram story, the Shazam match. Each piece on its own was easy to explain away. Together, they were a trapdoor under her whole story. When she came back out into the kitchen, hair pulled into a loose braid, she didn't look surprised to see me still there. Are you making dinner? She asked, like nothing had happened. I'm not hungry, I said. She opened the fridge, peered in, and said over her shoulder, we should probably get groceries tomorrow. You could have gotten them today, I said evenly. You were already downtown. Her head turned slowly, her eyes narrowing just slightly before she masked it with a puzzled smile. What are you talking about? You tell me, I said. Because I have your nap timed to the minute my card got charged at Vesper Room. I have a bartender who remembers what you ordered. I have your device name on the transaction. I have your little heart over the I on the receipt. And I have a friend of yours who's lying for you so badly it's embarrassing. For a heartbeat, her face went blank, like she'd been unplugged from the script she was running. Then the color came back, along with the outrage. This is insane, she snapped. You're building some conspiracy in your head because you're jealous or bored or... This isn't in my head, I cut in. My voice was calmer than I felt. It's in my bank statements. It's in the bar's records. It's in your phone. That's when she switched tactics, folding her arms and looking at me like I'd just admitted to reading her diary. You're spying on me, tracking me. Do you even realize how messed up that is? It's not spying when you use my card, I said. Her mouth opened like she was going to say something sharp, but she closed it again. She brushed past me toward the living room, tossing a final "you need help" over her shoulder. I stood there, watching her disappear into the other room, knowing the only help I needed was for the truth to stop hiding behind her voice. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed the same loop. The bank notification, the bartender's voice, the slip with her handwriting. The details sat in my head like pins in a map, all pointing to the same place, and no matter how I looked at it, she was standing there in the center. By morning, I decided I couldn't just keep circling it in my head. If I wanted an answer, I needed to go to the one person who might give me a piece she couldn't control. I found Max's profile, her so-called mentor from the design agency she'd mentioned once in passing. I'd never met him, but his name had popped up before in ways I didn't like. A comment on one of her old photos, a LinkedIn endorsement she never explained, and now, according to her feed, his office was just a few blocks from Vesper Room. I sent him a short, neutral message. Hi, Max. I'm reaching out because I believe you were with Ira yesterday afternoon. I'm trying to clarify something about a payment at Vesper Room. Would you be willing to confirm if you met her there? It took him less than 10 minutes to respond. We did meet there, yes. Just a casual chat about some possible work. Why? I typed back before I could overthink it. Who paid? He hesitated, at least I imagined him hesitating, before the dots returned. She did. Said she wanted to treat. My fingers tightened on the phone. Was she wearing a gray hoodie? Yeah, he wrote. Bleach spot on the sleeve. Why? Is something wrong? I didn't answer. I just took screenshots of everything and dropped them into the folder. That tiny bleach spot, the one she'd sworn was why she only wore it around the apartment, had walked straight into my evidence pile like it belonged there. Around noon, I called the bar again. This time I spoke to Ruslan directly. I told him the bank was filing a request and asked if he could confirm one last detail, whether they had footage from the entrance. He sighed but admitted they did, though it only showed the doorway and the timestamp. It's not crystal clear, he warned. But you can see two people walk in around 15:02. One's tall, dark jacket, the other's shorter gray hoodie. I didn't need it to be crystal clear. The timing alone was enough. When I got home, she was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. We need to talk, I said. She didn't look up. About what? Your next theory? About the fact that I've spoken to Max? About the fact that I've seen the bar's entry footage? About the fact that every piece of this points to you lying? Her head snapped up, eyes wide for just a fraction of a second before she forced them into a glare. You went through my friends now? That's low. You're trying to ruin my chances at a job because you can't stand the idea of me talking to another man? This isn't about him, I said. It's about you saying you were asleep when you were using my car downtown. It's about you getting your friend to cover for you. It's about lying to my face when I had the proof sitting in my pocket. She stood, closing the space between us like she was ready for a fight. You're obsessed, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. You've been watching me like I'm some criminal. Do you have any idea how suffocating that is? Do you have any idea how insulting it is to be stolen from in my own home? I shot back. For a moment, we just stared at each other, breathing hard in the quiet apartment. Then she laughed, a small, bitter sound. It was just a drink. 2 drinks. You're acting like I drained your savings. It's not the money, I said. It's the trust. And you spent it like it meant nothing. She looked away then, jaw tightening. Maybe you should think about why I didn't feel like telling you in the first place. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't turn into shouting. Instead, I stepped aside and let her storm past me toward the bedroom, the slam of the door ringing louder than anything we'd said. I stood there in the living room, staring at the spot where she'd been, and thought about how the whole story had started with a nap. Now I wasn't sure if I'd ever seen her sleep at all. The next morning, I made my decision. If she wasn't going to take responsibility, I'd let the institutions handle it. I called the bank again, confirmed all my evidence was attached to the dispute, and asked them to escalate it. The agent's tone shifted when I mentioned I had a witness and video. That will help your case significantly, she said. Funds are provisionally credited back to your account pending completion of the investigation. It wasn't about the money anymore, but seeing the temporary credit appear in my balance felt like a quiet acknowledgement that I wasn't imagining things. Then I reached out to the HR department at Max's agency. I kept it short, professional. I'm writing to make you aware of an incident involving one of your contractors and a potential conflict of interest. My partner, Ira, met with your creative director, Max, at Vesper Room yesterday afternoon. This meeting was paid for using my personal card without my consent. This is not an accusation of wrongdoing by your company, but you may wish to review whether this meeting complied with your policies. I attached the check, the screenshots, and the time-stamped footage stills from Ruslan. Within 2 hours, they replied. The tone was formal but clipped. They'd be reviewing the matter internally and taking appropriate measures. I didn't know what that meant yet, but it was a start. That evening, she confronted me. Why is Max telling me HR called him in? She demanded, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. Because I told them, I said evenly. Her mouth dropped open. You're trying to destroy my career. You used my money, lied about where you were, got someone to lie for you, and only admitted to being there when you were cornered, I said. I'm not destroying anything. You're just dealing with the fallout of your own choices. You're vindictive, she spat. You could have just talked to me. I did, I reminded her. Over and over. And every time you doubled down, her eyes narrowed, searching for some angle that might work. You've embarrassed me, she said finally. You embarrassed yourself, I replied. That night, she slept in the bedroom. I stayed on the couch. The silence between us was so thick, it felt like another wall in the apartment. 2 days later, the bank emailed me a formal update. Merchant confirmed transaction device as Ira's iPhone. Dispute resolved in cardholder's favor. The funds were now permanently returned. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand, but because it was satisfying to see the truth in writing, sealed in official language that didn't care about feelings. The HR department followed up the same day. Their investigation found that non-standard meeting practices had been used, and Max had been issued a formal reprimand. Ira's name was now flagged in their vendor system, meaning she wouldn't be considered for future work with the agency. I didn't feel triumphant, just done. That night, she tried one last angle. You've ruined my chances with them, she said quietly, as if hoping sympathy might seep through the cracks. No, I said. You did that when you made the choices you did. Her eyes went cold then, like she'd finally realized I wasn't going to undo anything for her. She turned and walked to the bedroom without another word. I stayed on the couch again, this time already planning my next move. I wasn't going to live like this, waiting for the next lie to drop into my lap with a bank notification. The decision was made. I just had to act on it. I started packing the next morning before she woke up. Not in a frenzy, not like I was running from a fire. Just steady, deliberate movements. Clothes folded into boxes, books stacked in neat piles, kitchen items wrapped in dish towels. Every sound felt louder than it should have been in the quiet apartment. She appeared in the doorway around noon, hair mussed, eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. "What are you doing?" she asked, though her voice already held the answer. "I'm leaving," I said without looking up. Her mouth twisted into something between a sneer and a smile. "Over this? Over a couple of drinks?" I set a book into the box and finally met her eyes. "Over the lying. Over the fact that I can't trust you with the smallest thing. Not my card, not my time, not my name. Over the fact that you made me feel crazy for seeing what was right in front of me." She crossed her arms, leaning on the doorframe. "You're being dramatic. You'll regret this when you cool off." I taped the box shut. "No, I won't." The only sound for a moment was the rip of the packing tape. I walked into the bedroom, opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand, and froze. There, tucked under an old scarf, was a cluster of receipts. Coffee shops, ride shares, little lunch spots, all on my card. The dates went back months. Tiny charges, small enough to slip under my radar. I sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through them. They were a pattern, a quiet siphoning I'd never noticed. This wasn't about one afternoon in a cocktail bar. This had been going on for a long time. When I came back into the living room, she was scrolling through her phone, pretending not to watch me. I set the receipts on the counter in front of her. "Was this all just part of the nap too?" She glanced at them, then looked back at her phone. "You're really digging now," she said with a shrug. I didn't answer. Some truths don't need a conversation. They just need an ending. By late afternoon, my boxes were stacked by the door. I left the keys on the kitchen counter next to the folder of receipts and the printed bank statement from Vesper Room. I didn't write a note. I didn't need to. She didn't say goodbye, and I didn't look back. A month later, walking through downtown after work, I passed Vesper Room. The brass lamps glowed in the dim, the same moody music spilling faintly through the glass. I didn't go in. I didn't need to see the place again to know what it meant. As I crossed the street, a waiter inside set a fresh drink on the bar, the ice clinking in the glass. I kept walking. Because some things you leave behind once, and some you leave behind every single day until they stop following you at all.